My name is Peyton.
My name is Kelly.
And this is a podcast called How Much Time You Got?
Welcome.
And what is it about?
It's a comedy podcast
Mm-hmm.
because you and I are the funniest people.
Because we're really funny.
That I know.
That we know.
And we're just going to tell each other stuff.
Yeah, random topics.
Random curiosities.
You could call it that.
Curiosities.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's different every time.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what it is, other than our own, of course.
Yeah,
we
the
did
other
all the work.
person the other person doesn't know what
Yeah.
the topic is.
Yeah.
There's
and
no theme.
No, never a theme.
It's just I thought about this week and wanted to tell you about it.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's how we rock and roll here.
I think so.
So, you first, me first. We didn't decide.
Well, we have to go through our thing. Like, how much time did you have this week?
How much time did I have this week? Not a lot of time. Like 1 second.
Really?
Yeah, it's been kind of crazy with her. Getting adjusted with the new puppy. Like trying to go back to like work, and one of us is always here, which is great, but it's still just like life is different with a puppy. She's making noise right now
She is.
behind your
She's
head.
She's right under my little feet.
Yeah. So it's been a journey with this one. So like a second. I've had a second of
second?
time. How much
Okay.
time have you had this week?
I've had a lot. I've had a good solid decade, I think.
Oh, wow.
I've been doing pretty good. I also
Okay.
have a puppy because
Yeah.
we have the same life.
We do.
I just got her.
Parallels.
What is your puppy's name? Why don't you?
Raven?
Raven.
Her name is Raven. She's 5 months old.
Mhm.
She's an indiscriminate mix of some kind, though we're pretty sure she's a pit bull.
Yeah.
Mostly and namely. Don't tell my landlord.
Are you not allowed to have dogs?
Well, there are some breed restrictions,
Oh.
but we agreed to put Black Lab mix for now because that's
Oh.
what he said he would put.
Okay.
So, yeah.
He also never sent us the breed restrictions.
Yeah.
Why
So,
are there breed restrictions?
because the world is racist against dogs and humans.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about yours?
Well, my dog's name is Sock. She is a border collie shepherd mix.
A lot of
Shepherd
energy.
undetermined.
Yeah.
We think she's a German shepherd, and she's a psychotic little rat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? Both our dogs have socks on their feet.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. Yeah.
Like, their paws are white.
Yeah. Little mittens.
Yeah, little mittens. Love that.
Yeah. So she's also 5 months old again
Mhm.
because our life is the same.
Parallels.
We both. She's a rescue, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we both rescued. Although my dog does not have a traumatic backstory. She
Adopt,
just,
don't shop.
She came from an Amish farm. So
We don't know what goes on there. Maybe we do.
Yeah, I think we have a good
I think we
idea.
have an idea. Yeah, I think she was the result of accidental breeding.
Yeah, that's what Sock is the result
Yeah.
of also.
Oh,
Yeah.
of course.
The worker dog on the farm was getting a little busy.
Yeah.
And
As they do.
yeah.
Right.
And she's actually the runt of the litter also.
Mm.
Little baby.
That's how Rooney was.
Yeah.
Rooney was the runt of the litter.
I don't believe you.
He was, and he was 95 pounds.
What was the not runt of the litter?
I don't know. I would have liked to meet them, honestly.
Crazy.
Sometimes the runt ends up being the biggest when all is said and done. In the dog world, at least. I don't know
Okay.
if that's true of the human world.
I feel like that you just made that up.
Look it up.
Nah.
Okay. All right. So,
All right.
me or you first?
I think you should go first
Okay.
again. And we say again because we have a secret episode that never came out because none of
Yeah.
us knew what the hell we were doing.
Technically speaking,
And we
this
recorded a
is
whole 2-hour episode.
Not
but
our first go around.
Yeah.
Technically speaking,
different stories. Different
Yeah,
stories. than the
different
first one.
tales.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm really
I
excited.
will. I will go then.
Okay.
If you insist. So my topic today is First Nations Australians.
Ooh.
This came about, I don't remember why. I was having a conversation with Leek about something, and I mentioned Aboriginals, and he was like, what is that? And I was like, they're like the indigenous people in Australia. And I was still trying to think of a podcast topic, and he was like, that would be a really cool topic. And I was like, you're right.
Mhm.
And of course, a lot has changed since I last learned about this community. One being, which I'll talk about later, calling them Aboriginals is actually not, it's pretty offensive
Oh.
because not all First Nations Australians are Aboriginal. So that's what I'll dive into today.
So, is this like indigenous peoples of Australia?
Yes. So they are the original settlers of Australia, essentially.
Before it was a prison colony?
Before it was colonized by the great colonizer of the world, Britain. Right. Which we will talk about colonization. Not much because I don't want it to take the spotlight, but I do want to recognize its devastating impacts.
As you should.
Yeah.
I think
I want
that's
to skip right over that.
Yeah.
So, boo colonization.
Yeah, we're not going to be doing that on this podcast.
No,
we're going to be
we
calling
are not
shit
pro
out.
colonizer on this podcast. So anywho, all that to say, one of the first things I wanted to make sure when I was researching this community is to use resources that were from this community. Because a lot of times, if you're getting information from, like, I don't know, the BBC, it might be tainted a little bit towards the colonizer's perspective.
Yeah.
So most of my resources are from institutes that are, like, run by First Nation Australians or are collaborated with them so that it's information coming from the community I'm talking about. And I used a lot of them. I used, like, 8 resources. Any resources that weren't like specifically like within that community, like National Geographic, I made sure to fact check it so that with somebody that with like an organization that was centering those voices. So let's start with who they are. So there is a definition that's currently understood, but was not for a long time. There have been about 67 different legal definitions of what it means to be First Nation Australian, which is really fascinating. I don't know how you come up with 67 to just name a group of people. Yeah.
Why are you even bothering with this?
Yeah, well, the thing is that, like, in terms of, like, this is mostly for legal purposes, but the community itself tends to, like, provide its own definition of what it means to be First Nation Australian.
I was just going to say, why didn't they just ask?
Well, that's the question, isn't it?
How silly of a question
That's
is
the
that?
question,
Why
isn't
didn't the
it?
colonizers ask who they were colonizing
Yeah.
what their preferred pronouns were?
As if they would ever do that. But the current definition as it's understood is, could you grab that from her? She is making a ruckus.
You mind, ma'am?
Sorry, my dog Raven is going to town on the ear of a lion/cheetah toy that we still can't determine.
Undetermined big cat.
Undetermined big cat.
Big cat rescue.
So the definition currently is of Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander descent, self-identified and or is accepted as such by the community in which they live or have lived.
Give me that one more time.
I will. Run it back. Of Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander descent, self-identified and or is accepted as such by the community in which they live or have lived.
Community by which they live. Okay.
So essentially, like, there are 2 main groups, which I'll talk about in a second. They're an Aboriginal group, Aboriginal people, and Torres Strait Islanders, right? So, like, those are 2 very distinct, separate groups.
What is the first word you're saying of the second phrase?
Torres Strait.
Taurus.
Like Torres. Taurus.
Taurus. Oh. I couldn't tell if you were saying tourist.
No, Taurus.
Or
no
Taurus, like the astrological sign.
It sounds like the astrological sign, but it's spelled Torres.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Gotcha.
For the clarification.
So essentially, you are like kind of a member of one of these like 2 groups, which then have a bunch of subgroups within them. If you are like recognized by the community is kind of like the main thing, or if you can track in some way like your lineage to one of those areas. So before this current definition, there were mostly definitions that were inconsistent and racialized.
Yeah.
As always. Something called the blood quantums was used. This has been used across like indigenous communities by colonizers, but it is essentially like this very offensive way of suggesting whether or not someone has indigenous blood, mostly by looking at their physical characteristics. It's very like eugenics-esque.
Yeah, didn't they do
Mhm.
that like here
Yep.
also with
Mhm.
black people being like if you have a drop of
Mm-hmm. Pretty much like all marginalized communities of color, this has been used against at some point.
Good.
Yeah. And it and a lot of times was used to deny people their heritage and their rights.
Yeah.
Especially because like in the First Nations Australian communities, like the skin color is vast. There are some that are like very, very fair skin and some that are very, very dark skin.
Mhm.
So you can't use that as an indicator of somebody's connection to the culture of the
Yeah.
land. So yeah, the other thing is that they're the first people of Australia, which is why they're coined or they've taken on the name First Nations Australians. They are believed to have occupied the land somewhere between 60 and 65,000 years before colonization occurred, which it occurred in about 1788, if I remember.
65,000 years.
Yep,
No.
before 1788.
So they're an ancient civilization.
Like BC.
I guess, yeah.
65,000 years.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I was going to get into this later, but now seems like the time to bring it up. Originally, they were believed to have come from Asia and to have moved like to Australia,
Okay,
have
that makes
migrated to
sense.
Australia. But new research suggests that they're actually the earliest migrants from Africa.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
How did they get there?
I don't know. That's a good question. If that's the case, they'd be the oldest population of humans living outside Africa.
Yeah, because isn't like Egypt one of the oldest civilizations?
Mm-hmm. So yeah.
And Mesopotamia in the Middle
Yeah.
East.
So that's
The cradle of civilization.
Some may say.
Mr. Finnegan said.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
You did. Shout out P. Finn. Yeah, so it's actually like recently believed that they originally hailed from Africa.
Wow.
Yeah, and that they had been there for 60 to 65,000 years before the British showed up. And yet, the British had the quote-unquote right to take the land.
Well, yeah, the white man's burden.
The white man's burden. And currently, as of 2016, for some reason I could not find a newer stat than 2016. I don't know what the census is doing over there in Australia, but their population is about 3.3% of Australia.
That's a good bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's raised or fallen in the past
but
8
also,
years, but
good bit for present day, not enough.
right.
Like,
Yeah.
what happened?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about
I'm
what
sure.
happened.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll talk
Yeah.
about that. So, in terms of the terminology that I'm going to do my absolute best to do correctly throughout this podcast, Indigenous Australian, that was like sort of a blanket term that was used for two very distinct groups. Again, Aboriginal peoples and Torres Strait Islanders. And it's often considered too generic and not reflective of experience. So it's really only used like when talking about the community as a whole, but even then not really. That's why I keep using First Nations Australians, because that's sort of the terminology that's currently widely accepted. But within this blanket term of First Nations Australians or Indigenous Australian are Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islanders.
Yes.
Right? So Aboriginal peoples are typically referred to those who inhabited the mainland of Australia pre-colonization.
Okay.
And they identify a couple different ways. They might identify with land or country, what often is referred to as country with a capital C.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes like saltwater people, for instance, if you live by the coast. Freshwater people.
Saltwater people.
I love it. Rainforest people, like depending on where
Yeah.
what ecosystem
That's
you
really
end up
cool.
living in, that's sort of how you identify. Some people by like language. So the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, yes, are from Sydney.
Crushed it.
Killed it. Are from Sydney. So like sometimes it's just kind of like basic like current origin of like, okay, where on current day Australia would you say that like you reside in?
Okay.
And then there's regional identity groups, which have no context in terms of like Australia's state or territory boundaries. So like the Koori people, they consider themselves like a region in Australia that like you wouldn't see on a map because
Okay.
it's not like a Australian designated space, essentially. So those are some of the ways that Aboriginal peoples identify themselves. And then you have Torres Strait Islanders. So those are people that inhabit the islands between northern Australia and New Guinea. They often refer to themselves as, and I still could not find the way to say this because it's kind of like an acronym in some ways, but I'll say Zenith Kes because that's what it looks like and that's the closest thing I've heard. But they refer to themselves as Zenith Kes, and they're from specific islands, tribes, family groups, or seas. So the reason they use that term is they're trying to reclaim the colonized name. So Torres Strait Islanders is a colonized name. That's the person who, quote unquote, founded that area.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah, figures.
Right,
Yeah.
figures.
Because I was
So-
going to say that doesn't sound like a...
Right. Like it sounds
Original.
It sounds like a white man's name.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
It is. So essentially this term, Zenith Kes, is an amalgamation of Torres Strait language names for the four winds that pass through the region. So there's like the ZE, which stands for Zay, which means south wind. There's the NA, which stands for Nage, which is the north wind. There's D, which stands for Dagam, which is the place or the side. And then TH, which stands for Thawa Thawa, which is coastline. And then the Kes means passage, channel, or waterway. So essentially, like, this term is an amalgamation of their wind patterns and the recognition of the passage of the waterway.
That is so fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Wow.
So that's sort of how the community self-identifies, and I think it's a term that they're wanting other people to utilize for them, though I also couldn't necessarily find if it's okay for non-Indigenous people to use that term. Yeah. But that is how they often refer to themselves. And either way, Aboriginal peoples or Torres Strait Islanders, their identity is like inherently connected to the ancestral land. And so that's always kind of what ends up being referred to as like what land I come from or what land I, is mine, essentially. And then the last thing is First Nations Australians is a widely accepted term. And what you always want to kind of avoid is like over homogenizing or kind of like erasing the diversity that exists within the group. So for instance, like Koori is a group of peoples from within the Aboriginal group of First Nation Australians. Calling all Aboriginal people Kooris would be offensive.
Okay.
Right? Because they're like a very specific group within the Aboriginal peoples, within First Nations Australians. Any questions so far or thoughts running through your head?
Yeah.
Such as?
I'm actually wondering why it's called Australia. And
like
it's
where,
making me
where
wonder.
The name came
it's
from?
making me is it a colonized name?
Mm-hmm.
Is it?
I believe it is.
Yeah.
I'm pretty certain that it is.
And I can't get past the 65,000 years thing.
Yeah,
like, I'll tell you that.
When I
right
read
now.
that, I was like, that's crazy.
Like, I straight up thought you were wrong.
Yeah. Well, imagine being somewhere for 65,000 years and then other people show up and they're like, actually, this is my land.
I can't.
Can you imagine?
No, and that also makes me think, like, do you feel a, like, connection to this land? Like, to
America?
To country capital C? Do you feel that connection? Because I don't. And I don't know if that's just because I am white and
well, let me say
I
this.
expect,
This is not our ancestral
that's why
land.
that's why I asked.
Absolutely not. I don't feel a connection to it.
No, okay.
I do feel a connection to the ocean generally.
Yeah.
Which makes me wonder if I ancestrally had some connection to the ocean. Because I was saying to Leek, like, I would like to live by the ocean someday. Like, I
Oh,
want
yeah.
to be close to it.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, not just water. Like, we have rivers here. Like, not just large bodies of water,
But,
but
like,
like, the
ocean.
ocean in particular.
You want to be a saltwater person.
Coastline, perhaps.
Coastline.
Yeah. Though, I would say we probably shouldn't use those terms to describe ourselves.
Yeah. Retracted.
Removed.
I feel like when I think of like what do I feel connected to, I feel connected to forests. I really like that.
Yeah.
But in terms of country capital C, no.
Right. Well,
It's not mine.
it's interesting you mentioned that because there's an activity I actually did that I will reference at the end when we talk more specifically about what culture means to First Nations Australians. Where they kind of show the non-Indigenous equivalent of what like 5 aspects make up culture, and land is like one of them. But whereas for First Nation Australians, it's like country with a capital C, like that's their term. For us, it's more just like land that we feel connected to, like places we feel drawn to. It has more to do with like place
Okay.
than land. Though I think that obviously like we all have ancestral roots somewhere. They all go somewhere.
Yeah.
And it would be interesting to see if you visited, like, if you went to... Have you ever been to Ireland?
No, I would like to.
Like, if you went to Ireland, I'd be interested to see how you felt there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I very much want to go.
Yeah.
I will go.
Yeah,
I will.
right.
But even that, it's like, I kind of feel like I don't have the right to feel like an ancestral, like, longing type thing because I'm not Irish. Like, I'm not from Ireland.
Let me tell you,
And
Kelly.
I'm not technically, like, I'm an American, I guess, but this also isn't my land. So, like,
Yeah.
it's kind of hard.
This right here, Kelly, this is what white supremacy is. It doesn't just affect people of color.
Mm-hmm.
It washes away the culture, the ethnic culture of white people.
I thought you were calling me a white supremacist.
No. But
But I
that's
was like,
what
oh,
white
no.
supremacy does. It washes away
No, you're right.
your ties to ancestry and says you're just white. That's what you are. You combine with other people's whiteness and you lose connection to your actual culture.
That's depressing.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it is
'cause,
still
like-
your culture. You were disconnected from it.
Yeah. Yeah, because even, like, I feel like if I were to go to Ireland, like, yeah, this is where my family came
Mhm.
from. I'd still be like, but I didn't. Like,
Yeah.
I have no claim to
Mm-hmm.
this as my ancestral home.
Right.
No matter how much I want to.
Mhm.
Like, you know.
Yeah.
But-
It's a shame. It's what white supremacy does. It just separates into color and non-color. That's it.
I never thought about it like that before.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I've been reading a lot about decolonizing therapy practices,
Oh, okay.
and so a lot of these themes have been coming up recently, and they anger me.
Peyton is a mental health counselor.
That's what I do. Yeah. I do mental health stuff.
Pretty good at it too.
Oh, well, thanks.
Yeah.
So sweet. But yeah, so yes, there are, like, I think that there is still a chance for people to reconnect with their ancestry if they've been deprived of it or disconnected from it. And to your point, I think that's something that can't be forced.
Yeah.
You know, you either feel it or you don't,
Mhm.
and you can explore trying to find ways to reconnect and feel it. But I do think inevitably it is more of like a spiritual soul connection to something,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I feel like it's like deep within you.
Yeah. It's
And-
like intrinsic to this, like their country is them.
That's
There is no
why-
separating it.
That's why I feel like it's so important to recognize like indigenous peoples because
Mhm.
they actually have a tie to the land
Yes.
capital L.
Yes.
Like that is their land.
Yeah.
Like and you know, the white man comes in, it's like, this is mine now.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's like, well, now all of us who are saying that this is our land, it's
Mhm.
not. But so if
Yeah.
you're a good person, you're like, well, I'm not going to sit here and say this is my land when
Right.
I know damn well it's not.
No.
So it's like we're all just living in limbo now
Yeah.
because you're also not letting the indigenous people.
Exactly. It negatively impacts every single person.
Yeah.
Like these like systemic concerns negatively impact everyone. And it's usually the dominant people's inability to see the way it negatively affects them that makes it difficult to break down these systems.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, because if you ask, like, my mom,
Mm-hmm.
what's your ancestral land? She'd be like, America.
U.S. of A.
U.S. of A.
Wave that flag.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Like, God
Right.
bless America.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, I've never once felt connected to this land.
No.
Never once in my life. Oh, our crew wants to say something.
Oh, no, I was just thinking about it, and I was thinking about how for Black people, it's
Mhm.
actually very, very big part of our culture
Yeah.
to associate with the city that you come from.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of, I don't
Yeah.
know exactly what ancestral roots or lands means, but we do have,
Yeah.
like, part of our culture is, like, claiming a territory.
It's similar in that way, I think. Yeah.
But you guys are like, nah, America, fuck that shit.
No. Sometimes something we're trying to do at the UCC is like an elemental healing type thing where we get like invite like anybody but mostly people of color to like reconnect with the elements because it's been like elemental healing is an important part of a lot of cultures and
Mhm.
like connecting with land, connecting with water, connecting with fire, connecting with wind, air, right? Like, so we're trying to do something like that, and I'm hoping to lead it because that's obviously right up my alley.
Oh, yeah.
But it's in the works.
That would be really neat.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a really different approach to
Mm-hmm. To healing.
healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's another thing about decolonizing therapy practices is not putting cultural ways of healing as like a supplement or like a back burner thing,
Mhm.
but putting it at the forefront.
You're doing the Lord's work over there.
I don't know about the Lord, but I'm
Or
doing
the
someone's
universe.
work.
The
Doing someone's
spirits,
work.
Something.
Someone out there.
Nature's work.
Nature?
Nature's work.
You could say it's
He's
nature's work.
elemental.
Yeah, you could say that.
Have you seen that movie?
No, I did want to watch it. I heard it got bad reviews, though. I'm gonna be honest.
Oh,
Did
really?
you see it?
I did.
You like it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was fine.
So you're not
It's cute.
you're not writing home about it.
Not my favorite
Right.
Disney.
Inside Out's coming out.
Production.
Inside Out 2's coming
Yes,
out.
I did see that.
I will be seeing that, and I will be sobbing.
Yeah. I'm not sure how it can get much worse than Bing Bong, but
I'm sure.
I'm
it
sure
will.
it could because she's getting older and anxiety, I heard,
Yeah.
is making an appearance.
Yeah,
so.
it'll be something. I'm sure it'll elicit some feelings.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's talk about the impact of colonization since we're on the topic.
All right. Welcome to How Much Time You
yeah.
Got, where we just depress you.
Because everything's terrible all the
Yeah.
time. So, yes, as I once assumed, colonization began in 1788. About 750,000 to 1.25 million First Nations Australians lived there at the time before they were ravaged by disease epidemics, as the colonizers always bring. Conflicts, massacres, though they're often considered genocides, which I think is probably fair to say.
Yeah.
And there aren't really like numbers in terms of like how many First Nations Australians were like impacted, killed, anything like that, which I read was like kind of important because that population doesn't want to be seen as it's just like a number that we can like spout off. Anywho, so I think a couple of important things to note about like what they consider stolen generations throughout colonization, some little important I don't know what to call them, moments to pay attention to. From 1910 to 1970, 10 to 33% of First Nation Australians' children were forcibly removed from their ancestral homes and lands in an assimilation effort. So they would be removed from their families and either sent to like boarding schools or like forcibly adopted by white families for literally no reason other than we want to assimilate these people to us.
Didn't that happen in Canada as well?
Mm-hmm.
like they got a bunch of children
I
were
believe
separated and
so.
sent to like schools, and like they
yeah,
were
it happens now in America.
yeah.
In Native American societies, people get ripped away from their families and sent to foster care or sent to adoptive families when there's no reason to necessarily
No.
do that.
Because other people think they know what's best.
Yeah.
The way people think they know what's best.
Because they're assimilating
Mhm.
savage people into
Yep.
civilized human beings.
Yeah.
That is
Helping-
the
they're
white
helping
man's
them.
perspective.
They're helping them.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
white savior complex
Yeah.
there.
You're welcome.
And they
Dicks.
weren't only just right. They weren't only just removed, but there were like legal repercussions if they were found speaking their native language
Great.
or practicing like native customs.
Yeah, let's just kill everything
Mhm.
that isn't bland,
yeah, white
white
bread.
soggy bullshit.
If you aren't white Wonder Bread in a plastic bag, I don't want you.
Disgusting.
Yeah,
I haven't eaten white bread in probably 10 years.
I don't really know anyone that does.
It's disgusting.
You eat wheat bread, so don't even bring yourself into this.
I mean,
saw the thought process.
that's all you need to know about society.
Yeah.
If you're a plain white bread eater, fuck you.
Go home.
Go
and you know
home.
what? While we're at it, this goes for the whole milk drinkers too.
Oh,
Get out of here.
gross.
Get out of here.
Bye.
Boo.
Boo.
Sorry, we got controversial there for a second. So yeah, that was terrible. Essentially, the community was being forced to not take part in something that is quite literally intrinsically tied to them, which is a real shame. It's a real shame. It wasn't until 1967 that First Nation Australians were recognized under federal law as like being like existing.
67.
1967.
67.
Yeah. And here's the real kicker. You ready for this?
No.
2023, last year, 60% of Australians voted no to recognizing First Nations Australians people in its constitutions and allowing them an advisory group to weigh in on relevant
Why?
parliament issues.
Why?
That's over half the nation.
What? Why? What is the reasoning?
I don't know.
Why?
I don't know. I can't make sense of it. Power, control, that's always what it comes down to. Fear of the unknown. But what if the white man loses his power? What will the world do then?
Oh,
What
Lord.
will the world do? Raven doesn't know.
Collapse.
I don't know either, Raven.
Raven's like, I just want to take a nap. Can you, like,
For
what the
real,
hell
can
is
you
happening?
shut the fuck up and let me nap? I've been
Nap
awake all morning. I'm tired as hell. You're ranting and raving about
Yeah.
fucking white supremacy.
You know what, Raven?
You have
It's
to
gonna
know
get
this.
worse.
You have listen. The election this year is coming up, Raven. You have to
Are
understand.
you doing your part? Are
She's-
you registered
She
to
literally is
vote?
asleep. She said, "I'm closing these bitches out." Yeah, so that's where that's at. Now, here's what I will say.
2023. Can you imagine?
Yeah, literally last year.
Like, what are we doing?
I-
Anyway.
Life never gets better. So the other thing that I do want to say, I don't want to focus 1,000% on colonization because they don't deserve any more airtime. But I do think it's important to recognize that they impacted this community in a devastating way. And there are a lot of stories. Storytelling is also kind of intrinsic to preserving culture amidst colonization. And storytelling, I think, makes it. It creates counter narratives. It removes the dominant narrative that we are fed and helps us to see the actual perspective of what happened. So if you're interested in listening to stories of people that were affected by colonization, you can go to Australians Together, where they have clips. I think there's 9 clips of different people telling their stories from the First Nation Australians community. So go there. I'm not going to tell their stories because it's not my story to tell, but
I like that, Peyton.
that's a plug.
That's wonderful.
It's a plug right there.
Excellent call out.
Thanks.
Hear it from their own mouths.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's nothing more I can say that they can't say better. So there have been some attempts to right these wrongs, though I would argue always not enough. Victoria is seeking to recognize First Nations Australians as sovereign nations. Victoria is like a region. It's like would it be considered like a country or like a town? I don't even really know.
I don't think it would be.
I didn't really
country.
pay it. I didn't really pay much attention
because isn't Australia
both a country and a continent?
Yeah,
it is.
So maybe
like a region,
maybe like
a town,
do they have
a province?
provinces
Might
there?
be a province.
I really don't know.
It's an area in Australia.
I don't know
It's an
enough
area in
about
Australia.
it.
I don't either. I decided to pay no attention to Australia.
Now, if I
itself.
was a white man, I'd be like, "This is what it is."
Right.
But
that's not us.
Self-respect and dignity.
Yeah, right. They're attempting to recognize First Nation Australians as a sovereign nation, compensate them for historical injustices, and reduce modern disparities. Who even knows what that looked like? That could just be buzzwords for all I know.
Yeah.
But apparently that's something they're attempting to do. And then, of course, First Nations Australians are working diligently to rebuild family networks, recover language, tradition, art, dance, stories, food, medicine. As always, the people of color are doing all the work.
Yep.
And honestly, as is their right to revitalize and bring back something that was attempted to be taken away by the white man. So, and all of this information, Australians Together, I'm really plugging them because they're a really great resource for all of this. And they're like a really good collaboration with First Nation Australians. So they have a lot of great information. If you create an account, which is free, you can access like all of it.
Sweet.
The last thing I wanted to talk about is culture. Because culture is literally the backbone of this community, as is for most communities. And I wanted to end by recognizing everything that the First Nation Australians stand for, believe in, and connect with, rather than the depressing colonization efforts.
Before you go into that, because I don't want to lessen the impact.
Right.
Do you know who Hugh Jackman is?
I do. Where is this going? Are you going to make me sad about Hugh Jackman?
No.
Because I was going to be really depressed.
No, I don't believe he's problematic. I can't be 100% sure, but I think he's a lovely person. I've seen him in concert before. I went with Alyssa, actually.
Interesting.
And he is from Australia.
Right.
And part of his show for that was, like, he obviously, like, sang, like, the musical stuff that he's in, but, like, a big chunk of the second half is he has, Indigenous musicians come and play, like, their instruments and their music. And it was really, really cool. Because I had never, ever heard anything like that before.
Right.
And he, like, even steps off the stage and, like, gives them their... Which, again, praising him, but...
Where did he perform? And where did they perform?
I think it was at... Now it's called PPG Paints, but I think it was at the Consol Energy Center at the time. Yeah.
The Consol Energy Center.
Consol Energy Center.
Throwback.
Yeah, which, again, like... snaps for Hugh Jackman for doing that, but
right,
it was really cool and pretty moving because it's just the sounds are just what's that see, like, I don't even know. I think it's called a didgeridoo.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah,
it's really fascinating because something I've been reading a lot about is how humanitarian efforts are just like a repurposed white savior complex for most people. Because, like, those communities don't need our help. They need, like, resources so that they can, like, rebuild what we destroyed.
Yeah.
So, like, I love that. And I would hope, like, on the back end that they're the ones making decisions on their culture's behalf. You know what I mean? I
do. And that's why I was, like, not sure if we should be praising Hugh Jackman for doing that.
Right.
Because I feel like it is kind of a slippery slope.
It is a slippery slope.
But it's also, like, he has this platform where he can do that kind of thing.
Right.
But I don't know. I never know how to feel.
As long as the First Nation Australians' voices are being centered, which I would like to believe that is what was happening there.
Hope so.
Then that's the key.
Yeah.
For them to be at the center, not us. We need to stop putting ourselves at the center.
I agree.
I don't even like being the center of attention.
All right. It starts with Wolverine.
Yeah. Love that. So, culture. So, culture is believed to be made up of 5 interconnected elements: land, kinship, language, law, and ceremony. The Australians' Together adaptation for non-Indigenous people was place, people, language, values, customs. Very similar, but they're a little bit different because these terms in particular like mean something. Like they hold specific value and a specific definition for First Nation Australians. So they don't want to like co-opt the language and make it ours, essentially. The connection to these 5 elements essentially creates what they call Singra Kuru, which is at home within. So feeling as though like, you know, you have a sense of like intrinsic belonging to yourself and to where you are, which I think is a beautiful concept.
I do too.
So let's start with land, shall we?
Okay.
So, First Nations, Australians, and land are inseparable. Like, there is no separating them, which I think we talked about earlier. They do not see themselves as owners of land, but rather protectors and respecters, which I think is also beautiful. Like, they've never seen themselves as owning the land in the way that the white man obviously believes that he owns land.
Yeah.
But rather sees themselves as, like, ultimate protectors and, like, sort of being responsible for taking care of the land. A quote that I saw that was beautiful was, "Land is our first and last breath. It runs through our veins." So, like, the land is First Nation Australians and vice versa.
Yeah.
Land is referred to as country with a capital C. And storytelling plays a significant role in country, with different stories being passed down generationally depending on the region. So, like, desert country would contain different stories than coastline country, right? And then there are also designated sites for ceremony within different country. And those can impact like the language spoken. So really like country is very diverse and unique. And even within country, there are different like tribes or like family groups that do different things, that have different customs. But country is like the core.
Very complex.
Yeah, is like the core of First Nation Australian culture. So yeah, to think that, you know, you're stripped of that and totally removed from that, that thing that feels as if it is you.
Yeah.
And not just feels like it is you. Like, how do you even make sense of that?
Especially if, you know, you don't see it as I own this land.
Right.
And then someone walks in and tells you
they own it.
Which is then telling you that they own you.
Yeah.
Because if you feel that you and the land are one.
Right. Yeah.
After 65,000 years, Bobby Joe walks in and says, "This is mine."
Jim Bob Joe walks in and says, I actually have this
I can't
now.
even imagine.
It would be like if somebody walked in the room right now and said, "Give me your blood. I'm sticking a needle in your arm and taking your blood out of your body." What?
Now,
what do you mean?
I will devil's advocate you here
Yeah.
and say, is it not your intention to demand that people give you their blood at your wedding?
A little bit. Just a piece of the pie. I'm not asking for the whole pie.
Okay.
And as I said many times, Kelly, which I can't believe you would bring this up and use it against me,
you know.
I would give you my blood back. I would give you my blood back. So it's more of like we're passing each other's blood to one another, you know? It's not a one-way street.
Okay. I just wanted to vibe
It's
check
not a one-way street,
Right.
Kelly.
All right.
Okay? We're
All right.
sharing. We're sharing. It's an intimate type
I mean,
of sharing.
I didn't ask
to
for
swap
your
blood.
though.
Right, but I'm giving it to you. Because I'm nice like that.
Well, what if you have a blood disease?
I might.
Oh.
Can't say that I don't. Listen, I've had a lot of surprises medically in the
mean,
past
yeah.
2 years, okay?
All right, yeah. Maybe.
Could be anything going on in there.
Yeah.
Anything.
An excellent reason to want to share your blood with
An
people
excellent
then.
reason. Because I have the finest blood around.
Do you
Can't
know-
find better blood. My blood, the best. Don't listen to the others.
Okay.
Huge
blood cells.
Huge blood cells.
Do you know what your blood type is?
I did know. They told me what it was. I have a blood test on my UPMC. I could pull it up for
Okay.
you right now, since you want to know so much. It's not...
I don't really want to know that much.
Since you're so invested in my blood specifically,
you know.
let me pull this up for you. No, I was very excited that like they finally told me, because my parents couldn't tell me what my blood type was. And I was like, I feel like it's kind of important to like have a basic way to know.
My parents also don't know what my blood type is, and therefore I do not know what my blood type is.
Yeah, I've had a lot of blood being drawn in the past couple of years, so they finally got around to it.
I wish we would have done that in high school, like, you know, in Twilight when they do blood typing, and I would have rather have done that than dissect a frog, personally.
That would have been really fun.
Yeah.
That would have been really fun.
But I guess people pass out and stuff.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, remember Bella? She passed out because she's afraid of blood. And
Oh,
was
really?
like, oh my god.
No, I don't have any memory of that. To be honest, high school's a little blurry.
No, I'm talking about...
No, wait! You're talking about Twilight. Oh, okay.
Alright. So when I
Well,
said...
that was my high school, basically, right?
When I said Edward, you were like, yeah, that makes sense at our all-girls high school that we attended. Edward
I think
was
I
definitely
was
there.
so, like, focused on
Alright, you
trying
weren't
to
fucking
find my
listening
blood
to me.
type.
That's
I
what was
not
happening. You
listening
weren't
to
listening to me.
I was not listening
Okay.
to you even a little
I don't even
bit.
fucking care what your blood type is.
You know what? And I honestly can't find it, so we're just gonna have to let that go. We're gonna have to let that go. Oh! A positive.
Oh.
Nerd.
How does that
A
mean?
plus. Oh, look at this
Oh,
guy over
yeah,
here. A
look at
plus
this
blood.
Fucking Catholic education. Yeah, that's my blood type.
Alright.
Anyways, moving on. Little side quest there. So next we have language. So here's another quote that I have from Ms. Amelia Turner, who is an elder in the Aboriginal community. Our language is sacred. Words are given to us by the land, and those words are sacred. Words make things happen, make us alive. Words come not only from our land, but also from our ancestors. Language is what we see in people. Language is what we know of people. Language is how people identify themselves. Being you is to know your language. It is rooted in your relationship from creation, in your kinship that cycles from then and there onwards and onwards.
Wow.
So similarly, language is like, it's a bedrock in the culture, right? Which is just another thing that was ripped away. That was they attempted to destroy their language.
Yeah.
The white man attempted to destroy First Nations Australians' language. Now, there are many efforts to revitalize it, which is great. And, it's such a shame that it has to be revitalized.
What is the language? Is there...
It's so diverse. Within family groups, there are sometimes different languages.
So whole different languages, not just different dialects or different phrases.
Almost whole different languages.
Wow.
There are so many different, it's
so there's not
really diverse.
one name for, okay.
No, I don't believe so. Not that I could find, at least. Language is particularly rooted to both country and kinship, which we'll talk about kinship next.
Mm-hmm.
But because of that, there's so much diversity within country, within kinship within country. So it's just the diversity. I feel that's one of the most beautiful things about First Nation Australian culture is the diversity that exists within it.
Yeah.
It's so vast and so unique
Mm-hmm.
and special. And that's where belonging comes from.
Mm-hmm.
It's this thing that you and I share that other people don't share.
Yeah, a uniqueness.
Yeah.
And that, I feel that builds a deeper connection.
Right.
Also. So
Right.
that makes it even more...
I agree. Kinship. Kinship is a way of being and a sense of belonging, which we just talked about. It's really interesting. Kinship, so there's foundations of kinship. And kinship is who First Nation Australians are according to nation group, family, community, and country. It's not a hierarchy, it's an organization. And it does not require blood lineage at all.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, that's important because a lot of people unfortunately cannot trace through blood lineage back to their connection to country or to a family group or something. And there are over 500 nations across the continent. And then there are clan groups, and then within clan groups there are family groups. The three foundations of kinship. The first one is moiety, which is probably mispronounced, though it is Latin for half.
Oh.
Latin?
And,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was intriguing.
Yeah, that's
I was
interesting.
okay. They're essentially giant webs that connect people, land, resources, non-human kin, and dreaming, which is something we'll talk about towards the end.
Dreaming.
Mm-hmm. Which is like a ceremonial, spiritual belief sort of situation. So people and environment are split into two halves that mirror each other to create wholeness when together. So that's essentially what that looks like. It's determined by maternal or paternal lineage, and you cannot marry within your moiety, like you can't marry within that. And the terminology differs between nations, so it might not be moiety everywhere, but the concept remains the same.
Yeah.
Then you have totems. That's the next foundation of kinship. Totems are nation, clan, and family groups that have preordained totems. Those are split among moieties. So the preordained totems tend to link a person to country that like is like saying you are connected inherently to this country. And it's the same thing as with the land. It's something they're accountable for. It's not something they own. It's something that they like have to take care of and oversee and protect and respect. And then there are personal totems. So the preordained totems go to nation, clan, family groups. Personal totems are gifted and represent the characteristics of people in non-human forms. So like I might be given a totem of like a lion or something, right? Or like you might be given a totem of like a crow or something.
Yeah.
Right. So those are totems. And then skin names is the last foundation of kinship. These are surnames that recognize a person's bloodline and generational links. They cannot be shared by husbands and wives or their children because it's a sequential system.
Oh.
So each nation has skin names with prefixes and suffixes for gender. There's up to 32 names in each cycle. So let's say we're looking at like a matrilineal nation. The mother would be 1. That'd be like the first cycle. The children of that mother would be 2. And then the child's child would be 3. So it's like generational. Now within a group, within like a clan group, all the mothers of that generation would be 1. All of their children would be 2.
Okay.
So if like we lived in the same like clan and we were born in the same generation, we would have the same like skin name.
Okay.
Essentially.
Yes.
So that's their third foundation of kinship.
Wow.
It took me a while. I read this multiple times before I fully understood what was being said because it's so different from I think the way that like it's sort of like American culture runs. But I thought that it was pretty neat the way that it connects generations to one another.
So when you say a husband and a wife, for example, can't share, so then what happens with their children then? Like,
so I guess it depends on whether it's a matrilineal or a patrilineal nation. I guess would depend. So either like, I think pretty much that. Like, I don't know what the, like, okay, let's say it's matrilineal and like the mother is 1. I don't know what the father would be then.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of what I was
I'm unsure.
getting at. Like, what, depending on whether it's patrilineal, matrilineal, like what happens for the...
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I couldn't find like much on it, which...
That's interesting though.
Honestly, like, sometimes I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be able to find anything on it. Maybe they should, they should be allowed to keep their culture. We don't need to know like
every single little bit. Yeah,
it's like not my.
We're not entitled to that.
Yeah. But that is what I know.
Okay.
Is this? But that is a really good question. Law is the fourth. What word did I use? Element of culture. Law is essentially just common features of acceptable behavior, which differs from group to group and is usually handled by elders. And law existed well before colonization. So we'd just like to put that out there. The white man did not create law and order. It has actually existed way before them. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who'd have thought?
Surprise, surprise. Last thing we have here, ceremony.
I'm excited for this one.
I was also very excited for this one because, as you know, I'm a spiritual girly.
Yeah.
So I was excited to learn more about this. And also, the language around this was also kind of up for debate in terms of what is like acceptable to call their this specific part of ceremony. Dreaming was the one that I saw most often as recognized as acceptable. So I will use dreaming with the recognition I could be wrong as to what is actually acceptable. So dreaming, whoa, I just made a mistake. Okay, I fixed it.
Did you just delete everything?
Everything like went to the sides. I don't know what happened. So dreaming is the beginning that never ended, a continuum of past, present, and future. So the term itself is not sufficient because there's no English translation for like the complexity of this experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's a spiritual. I did it again. I need someone stop me. It's a spiritual and existence belief system that posits that spirits, also ancestors, created the world long ago. It's absolutely foundational to First Nation Australians' culture. And it's believed that ancestors showed First Nation Australians sacred sites where rituals and ceremonies were held to keep the spirits alive. And different tribes and groups have different beliefs about who exactly the ancestors and spirits were. Some believe they're animal spirits, some believe they're snakes, some believe they're something called Wantina, which is cloud and rain spirits. So there's like some differences across like tribal cultures of like who exactly the spirits and ancestors were, but the belief that there are ancestors and spirits that like created the world are essentially held true in most areas.
Okay.
And this was when everything was ordained and created by spirits to be upheld when formation took place. So like dreaming was where everything was sort of ordained, like this is how things are going to be. This is how people are going to act and behave and live in community. And before that, it was just emptiness, just like nothingness, essentially. And so First Nations Australians, there we go, sort of believe this is where their like responsibility comes in, is to like uphold and create the nation that was ordained by these spirits and ancestors.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. That's all I got.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Every single word you said, new to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was new to me as I was researching it as well.
I learned from top to bottom there.
I love that.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
That was great.
Anybody that listens to this, whoever you may be, probably 3 people max.
Yeah.
If I said anything that was incorrect, feel free to write into me.
Yeah,
however, you can do that. Find me somewhere. And I'm open to corrections.
Yeah, we're always going to be open to corrections,
yes.
I think. Like, let
me,
us
please.
know when we're wrong.
We'll be able to, plug our email in.
Okay, so look for an email plug if you see it anywhere.
Yeah. It'll be in the description.
It'll be in look at the description below.
Yeah, I don't know.
So that was exactly an hour. So we're already probably a little bit longer than our crew would like. But we're gonna carry on. We already told him it was gonna be an impossibility, and here we are.
He tried to stifle our creativity and general vibe.
Yeah. So we'll carry on.
I say we take a quick intermission, make sure everything's running smoothly.
Yeah, we should probably do that.
Also,
yeah, we're gonna take a brief intermission. We're back from intermission. Back from intermission, baby.
I peed.
I did some cuddles with Raven.
Yeah.
Probably should have gotten some water. I think I'm pretty dehydrated.
There you go.
Thank you, crew.
Crew, thanks. All right, well, while we're waiting for the water.
Yeah.
I have a throwback kind of for each. Don't get too excited.
Okay.
It's just a throwback to our first episode that we recorded. But again, we didn't know what we were doing, and that's not going to be released.
Right.
For now, maybe one day we'll release it.
Maybe on our Patreon.
Our Patreon.
We'll be able to get the first ever episode when we get rich and famous off of our podcast.
Yeah, if that ever happens.
Yeah.
Which would be cool.
That would be something.
Not expecting that.
No, I'm not expecting that.
And honestly, don't really care if it happens or not. I just like to chat with you.
Yeah, I have no...
Just like to yap.
Exactly. We're just yappers.
Just yappers.
Just chatters.
So I'm just gonna like go back to that just for a little
Mhm.
bit. It's like for anyone who hasn't listened to it, which is everybody.
Everyone. Which is all of
It was
you.
centered on the third man syndrome.
Yeah.
Which is basically the idea.
You know she brought 7 different water bottles with her. You should drink that though,
Yeah, you
because
should.
you haven't had any water today either.
Thank you, though. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. If I wasn't an obnoxious
I love it.
drink person.
Yeah. You know what that's another sign of?
But, what?
White supremacy.
Bisexuality.
White supremacist. Stop saying.
I wonder if it does have white supremacist roots, huh? Huh.
To all of our listeners, I promise I am not a white supremacist.
No, Kelly's not a white supremacist.
Did I tell you that my latest crush is Sabrina Carpenter?
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Not that I'm.
No, but if you were,
If I was.
hypothetically.
Anyway, our first episode that we recorded didn't work out.
No.
But that I did it on the third man syndrome, which is the idea that in times of trauma or like intense like survival situations, there's this feeling of having somebody next to you, like by your side, that helps you through that trauma and survive. So, my story was on Ernest Shackleton
Mhm.
and like the origins of the third man syndrome. So if you don't know about that, it's a pretty good story. I recommend that you do that. But anyway, all that to say, this is another polar themed story. Because I wanted to pay homage, got it, to that first one. And Peyton knows this, but little Crew, do you have something to say?
I'm sorry.
Little known fact about me,
Mhm.
I'm obsessed with polar exploration.
Yeah.
Which I don't really know how that happened. I just really like, I just think
Wonder upon things
it's
sometimes.
neat.
Yeah.
I just think it's neat. So without further ado,
Mhm.
an unnecessary intro nonsense that I probably didn't need to go into.
I loved it.
This is a little book report on John Sims Jr., the Hollow Earth theory, and a couple polar conspiracies.
Love.
Yeah.
I love a conspiracy.
Yeah.
Take me there.
Right off the bat, Peyton, if I said to you that I believe that the Earth was hollow
Mm-hmm.
and that it was made up of concentric spheres that fit inside of each other like a little Russian doll,
Mm-hmm.
and that there was an Arctic opening to the center of the Earth, the hollow Earth, and an Antarctic opening
Mm-hmm.
to the hollow Earth, and that the inner surfaces of those concentric spheres were bathed in sunlight because of reflections on the outer surfaces,
Right.
and that the very center was a warm, rich land filled with vegetables and animals and people and crops.
And King Kong?
I was just about to say.
Maybe. What would you say?
I
you
would.
believe me?
This is what I would say.
What'd
You
you say?
had me in the first half. I was
Mhm.
like, yeah, maybe. When you said that there were lands bathed in sunlight,
Yeah.
bathing in sunlight,
Yeah.
and rich vegetation in the center of the earth, that's where you lost me a little bit.
Okay.
But you also know that I'll get on the ride of any
Yeah.
conspiracy theory. I did a whole PowerPoint on how the moon landing was fake, and I still kind of believe that one. So I'm excited to hear where you take me today.
Good. I'm glad. Yeah. So, that is this guy's hollow Earth theory.
Mhm.
This John, I'm just gonna call him John because
John
I don't.
Wilkes Booth.
That's a tale for another day. But so his name John Cleve. I
Yeah.
don't know. Sims.
John.
I didn't look it up because it's not. He's
cares?
whatever. So he was a military man. Just a little bit of background on him.
Mm-hmm.
Fought in the War of 1812.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the War of 1812?
I'm familiar with it enough
Cool.
by the name alone.
He was honorably discharged
Okay.
and became a traitor in St. Louis, which he was a failure at.
Oh.
Yeah.
Damn.
He didn't do great.
Mm.
Not really good at trading things.
Sucks
Trading
to
goods.
suck.
Yeah, whatever. So during this time, he's thinking about space.
As one does.
Yeah, you know, when one is failing at their new job,
Mhm.
what do you think about space?
Space.
I don't, because space gives me crippling anxiety,
Mhm. Much like talks of death.
much like talks of death and existential.
Anything existential, yeah.
Yeah, I don't like that. Anyway, he's thinking about space. He's thinking about Saturn.
Uh-huh.
Saturn has those rings on it.
Mm.
He's like, space, Saturn, Saturn's rings,
Mm.
circles, concentric circles,
All coming
spheres,
together.
hollow Earth.
Yeah.
So he basically wakes up one day
Mhm.
and he decides, I'm going to rock everybody's shit today.
Yeah.
And he's like, you know what? The Earth, yeah, it's hollow.
It's
It's
hollow.
hollow.
Don't worry about it. It's hollow.
Don't worry about it. Except really worry about it because I'm obsessed with it and I
Yeah.
want every single person to believe this theory.
Right.
So he releases like all of these newspaper articles and like not policy circulars, that's what we call them at work. Circular,
Okay,
that's what they're called.
miss.
Like
This Department of Health.
yeah, they're just like pamphlets basically. And in general the world was not impressed.
Yeah. That's a hard one to get people on board with, I think.
Yeah. And you know, I imagine that it didn't really please him very much to have had this like big revelation
Right.
and have everybody be like,
And?
yeah, okay, that's
So?
not true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he spent the rest of his life basically trying to get people to jump on his train.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I feel like is common for people with really crazy ideas.
How did he make a living during this time? Was he still failing at that job? Or
Yeah.
like, okay.
He dedicated his life to telling people about the Hollow Earth theory.
Okay.
I don't know how he had income.
Right, that's what I'm thinking.
I would imagine he probably had some military benefit
Yeah, could
thing.
be.
I don't really know how it worked in
Stipend
1812.
situation,
Yeah,
perhaps.
you know, I mean, I don't know if they had GI Bill back then.
Right.
I know they didn't, but
Yeah, something might have been helping him out there.
who knows? Maybe he married well.
1812, you could probably just like keep moving from town to town.
Yeah,
on
honestly,
horseback, or
yeah.
like just walk.
Walk, take a ship.
Everything
4
was
years.
like half a penny those days, so
A 6 pence.
yeah, it was probably fine.
So he delivered this message of the Hollow Earth theory to, quote, each notable foreign government, reigning prince, legislature, city, college, and philosophical society throughout the Union, and to individual members of our national legislature, as far as the 500 copies would go.
Oh,
So he had 500 copies,
Yep.
and he gave it to anyone he could think of.
anyone he could think
Anyone
of.
he could think of. Reigning princes.
Hey, he's a hustler.
Can you imagine if you're like Prince William
Yeah.
and somebody comes up to you and be like, Your Majesty, please read this pamphlet that I wrote about how the earth is hollow.
I need you to get this
Yeah.
information out.
Please get it
Use
out.
your platform, sir.
Yeah, please. Please, we can't all be royalty.
Yeah.
So he actually like his son kind of also wanted people to like get behind it because it was kind of like a Hamilton situation, you know,
Right.
where his son was like, my dad knows exactly what he's talking about, and if you say that he doesn't,
Right.
I'm gonna fucking duel you.
Yeah.
And I don't believe a duel occurred, but his son kind of took up the mantle of being like, we need to like learn about this because he's on to something here.
Right.
So, but even his son said that the reception by the public
Yeah.
was bathed in ridicule.
Yeah, right. And I mean, you have to imagine that he was probably indoctrinated with this belief system since he was born. So
Yeah.
of course he's going to be like, listen to my dad.
Yeah,
You know?
please.
That's how it works.
And he was very disappointed to see that actually, quote, the production of distempered imagination or the result of partial insanity. And he was actually very much ridiculed in newspapers, like,
Yeah.
for a very long time.
Right.
Which, like, yeah, you're kind of bugging.
Bring bullying back.
Sometimes, you know,
No, we shouldn't bully people. But you know what we should do? Not spread misinformation.
That's what I feel like personally, and I feel like not necessarily bullying, but if you're spreading misinformation, you need to be told to
You
cut
need
it
to be
out.
checked a little bit.
Yeah.
You know?
And maybe not in a nice way because clearly
Yeah.
your intentions are also bad.
You need to be like, listen, I hear you, but also here's this million page explanation of why
Yeah.
you're seriously so wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
I think so.
Just got tapped. Anyways, continue.
Thank you, crew. Thank you. So to be clear, he wasn't the first person to suggest that the Earth was hollow. He was
Right.
just the first person to say that there were these holes in the
Mhm.
poles. So that brings us
Holes in the poles, baby.
So that brings us back to like polar
Put
stuff.
that
So,
on
like,
a t-shirt. That's
yeah.
our first merch
holes
item.
in the poles.
Holes in the poles.
I like it. So he thought that, and again, I just really want to emphasize that he thought, he just woke up
Yeah.
and said, this is what it is.
Right.
No research.
As if coming out of a very
Yeah.
vivid dream.
He hadn't been there.
Yeah.
He was just like, there's holes in the poles.
Right.
And he said you could enter them and basically get to the center of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And he also believed that the curvature of these openings were gradual enough that you could be traveling to the center of the earth and not even realize that you're moving through the spheres.
Oh.
What do you think about that?
I think it's probably as unlikely as the fact that there's a hollow center in the middle of the earth.
Yeah, I call bullshit on that.
Yeah.
Because, and I have a pretty open mind. I like this kind of stuff.
I love it.
But I just feel like I would notice a gaping hole in the ground
Yeah.
that delivered me to a hollow center of the earth.
So he's basically saying, like, you could wander into a cave that's actually, like, the opening to the center of the earth.
No.
Oh.
And I'll tell you why. Because,
Okay. Because
that-
that, maybe.
yes.
Maybe.
So, to that point, if you're thinking, so maybe this hole is like a crevice in the ice or something, or like a cave, like you said, and I
Right.
could just wander in it, and I don't actually know that I'm walking to the center of the earth.
Mhm.
He thought there was a giant, like, 1,000-mile gaping hole
Oh.
in each of the north and south poles, and that you could fly a goddamn airplane through it. And fly your airplane and not realize that you're flying through the center
I
of
think
the
you
earth.
would notice that.
Yeah.
I think you would notice that.
I do too. I do too.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm walking around in the barren white wilderness and I see a giant black hole,
Yeah. I'm going to think something of it.
yeah. Or if I'm flying a plane through
Right.
it, come on.
If I'm flying a plane above it, I'm going to think something of it. I'm going to think, wow,
Yeah.
look at that fucking
What is
gaping
that?
hole in
What
the
the
ground.
hell is that? Yeah.
Now, I'm assuming, when was the plane invented?
something because
Was
the
it?
Wright brothers.
Listen, I'm
Didn't they invent
terrible
the
with
plane?
time. There's this game called Chronology where you have to put things like on a timeline. I lose every time because I'm terrible with like dates.
I'm gonna look it up real quick. I have
Just
a-
because we're talking about
Yeah.
planes, and I'm assuming that there probably weren't many planes making the trip at that point.
1903.
that's okay.
Yeah.
The Wright Flyer truly changed the
Right.
world. Yeah. So, and he was much older at this point. Like,
Right.
we're not still in like the beginning of the 1800s. We've like
Yeah,
moved,
yeah.
and he's like spouting his.
Yeah, he's
theories.
just right,
Yeah,
like just nonsensically just like spreading misinformation.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
Still
yeah,
with
I
me
think
on-
I would notice the whole.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
I think any person would
I
notice
think
it.
most anyone, yeah,
But he didn't just think that the Earth was hollow. No, that wasn't enough.
couldn't be enough.
He also thought that, quote, all celestial bodies, both visible and invisible, from the greatest to the smallest, from the sun down to the most minute blazing meteor or falling star, are all hollow. Thought the sun was hollow. I'm assuming he thought his main bitch Saturn was hollow.
Now you've really lost me.
Thought stars were hollow. Oh my god, stars hollow.
Huh?
You're not, you don't get it. You don't.
I do a little.
Stars Hollow?
I do a little bit.
Gilmore Girls?
Yeah,
Okay.
I do a little. I've never seen Gilmore Girls, but I've heard of things relating to it.
That, as I said it, I was like, oh no, she hasn't seen that.
I haven't, but I've heard of it, so it's okay.
I don't think you'd like it anyway.
Probably not.
It's not enough.
I think I watched an episode of it and I was like, eh.
Yeah, it's not enough for you.
This is craziness.
His theory?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, like, okay, say one thing is hollow and, like, maybe I'm on board, but,
Yeah.
like, everything
hollow.
is hollow?
Everything.
Like, now you're just, like, really, like, now you're really pushing the buttons here. Like, you're making it more outlandish by the 2nd and
Mhm.
wanting people to grab it as if it's truth.
Yeah, you're just saying whatever you can to try and get people to be like, okay, that makes sense. Because
Right.
I get it. I'll
Mhm.
tell you this, I get it. Because if you can say that the earth is hollow and also everything else is hollow, then you've standardized it. And everything is the same. So it's like, yeah,
Okay.
either the earth is hollow and everything is hollow, or it's not hollow and
Okay.
nothing is hollow.
Yes.
You get that?
No, I get that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, okay.
All
Okay.
right. See, to me, it sounded even more outlandish because in my brain, I'm like, okay, I could get behind this, like, sort of anomaly.
Yeah.
I can't get behind you thinking that this is true of everything.
Mm-hmm.
That almost feels crazier to me.
What's funny, too, is, like, he went on this lecture tour,
Mm.
and by the end of the tour,
Yeah.
he had changed his mind. Like,
I bet you Pitt would let this guy come to their campus and talk.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They let anybody walk on
They
their
let
campus. and
anybody walk
talk.
on that campus.
So he changed his mind at like the end of his tour. He was just
Yeah.
on like a little East Coast tour.
Mhm.
Which again, where's the money coming
Yeah.
from for you to do this?
Right.
Who is funding you?
Mm-hmm.
And so he was like, all right, guys, you got me. Still hollow.
Yeah. All right, I'm caught.
You know what? There's not 5 spheres like a little
Okay.
Russian doll. It's
Yeah.
just one.
Mm.
But it's still hollow in there. Like you knock it,
Mhm.
it's hollow. I guess he thought, like, okay, maybe if I change my mind a little bit and say this, more people will.
And it's so the opposite. When you're
Yeah.
like preaching this,
You can't
thing,
go back.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
you're like actually JK. It's like, well, no, stand on business.
Yes.
Stand
And
on
also,
business.
you have no basis.
Yeah.
There is no scientific basis
Right.
for you to be making these claims.
Yes, it's not like whenever we make a scientific claim and then we do more research and we learn
Yes.
that we were wrong about the first conclusion.
Yes.
It's like you started it wrong and you're finishing it wrong.
Yeah.
And all you're doing is wrong, and there's
Wrong.
There's
Wrong.
nothing.
Wrong.
There's
Wrong.
nothing there. Crazy.
So after he publishes this theory, right? Like he
Mhm.
publishes it.
Yeah.
And 2 years later, he's just doing like those circulars that I said. He's writing letters to newspapers and
Mhm.
magazines. He's trying to get it published. And he did actually gain a little bit of a following, like a little bit of an audience. But it wasn't really enough. Like people were still like, okay, those kooks over there
Yeah.
are like
Right.
just crazy.
Yeah. Nonsense.
Most people were like, you're stupid. So
Dumb.
he moves his family from St. Louis to Kentucky,
Mhm.
and then he starts like lecturing in other towns, and he even had like a wooden globe,
Mm.
and he had like the
Yeah,
polar.
props.
He had props that he made,
Okay.
and that there were polar sections removed
Mhm.
so that people could see the center of the earth.
Right.
Right.
Of course.
So yeah,
You need the diagram.
you need the diagram so that you
That's
can see.
that was the missing piece. This is why people didn't understand. They didn't have a diagram.
You can actually go and see this globe.
Oh.
It is available in the collection of the Academy of Natural Sciences of Drexel University.
Okay.
Does it belong there? Is it science? No,
No.
but you know,
It's something.
you can go see there.
Yeah.
You can go see it there.
Piece of history, I guess.
Another thing that's funny is that he was not good at public speaking. He
Oh,
was
no.
really bad at it.
Yeah.
And he was very uncomfortable.
Mhm.
The thing that I read said that he possessed a nasal voice,
Mm.
but still he persevered
Oh,
because
God,
he
you don't want
believed in
that.
it. He believed in it so much, and like I guess I can kind of respect that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, dude,
Be so for real.
be so for real.
Yeah. Right.
I keep going back to it, and I think it's because I'm like a science person.
Yeah.
And like, you can't just say whatever you want. You can't. You can't. I'm sorry, you can't. You can't.
You can't.
So, he does start to get like converts. He is filtering into like public consciousness. Like, people know who he is.
Right.
And he wants to garner support for his own expedition to go there. So there, I do have one like little fun fact. He sat for a portrait, and it was never finished, but the inscription on it says, "John Cleve Sims, the man with the hole at the pole."
I love that.
Yeah. And it says, "Drawn, and a good likeness it is."
Oh,
great.
Love.
Yeah. So I only mentioned all of that to like kind of get you primed for like conspiracy and polar exploration and stuff, and just to kind of like get the juices flowing for some other things that I have to share with you, because it's bonkers.
You know what? If it was like 1850, let's say it's 1850, I got some extra time on my hands. Yeah. I want to see this guy talk. I want to see this guy chat, right? Mm-hmm. You know what I would do? I would sit in the audience. Now, I'm a time traveler at this point.
Okay.
I'm me.
You're you as of now.
I'm me as of now. Now, would I be allowed in because I'm black? I don't know. That's a problem I'd have to worry about when I got there.
That's cross that bridge when I
But what I would shout in that moment, "Denial is a river in Egypt. Your husband is gay." That's what I would do.
Okay. Yeah.
That's where I'm sitting here.
Heckle him.
I'm also sitting I'm sitting with flat earthers and seeing how this would land on them.
Okay, it's funny you mentioned that because I didn't include it in this, but I wanted to.
Yeah.
Some people also believe that there is an ice wall in the poles.
Like Game of Thrones ice wall?
Yes. And that the earth is flat, and that ice wall on the poles, like if the earth is like a disc, there's a wall along the poles. Mm-hmm. And people are like, what's behind the wall? Like, what is it? They don't want us to know what's behind the wall. Probably nothing, because there's not an ice wall because the earth isn't flat.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But, like, people are like, the government doesn't want us to know what's behind the ice wall. Like, it's a secret.
Okay.
The earth is flat.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, and it's funny that we were also talking about, like, colonizers and, like, the superiority that white men have, because it's like the audacity that a white man has to just wake up one day and spout nonsense and expect people to believe him and be pissed that you're not being believed. Yeah. What gives you the right to do that?
Right.
People are trying to tell the truth and not getting believed. Yeah. And you're mad because people don't believe in the hollow earth.
Silly little theory. It's crazy.
What's even crazier is that one of his supporters actually helped to raise funds for America's very first official venture to the Antarctic.
Wow.
Yeah, like he was a big part of that. Like,
imagine like raising money to disprove your own theory.
Well, that's what happened to the flat earthers. Remember when they did that thing?
Yeah.
When they ran that experiment to prove that the earth didn't have a curve, and they ended up proving that the earth did, in fact, have a curve.
They're like, damn, we just spent all of this money to prove ourselves wrong.
Which, like, ancient civilizations had done 65,000 years ago. Yeah. Okay. Great.
Awesome.
So, moving ahead a little bit, we're now in the 1900s. Between 1920s and 1950s, there were a couple expeditions conducted by who? The U.S. government. Led by this man, Richard Byrd, to the poles. That drummed up a little bit of conspiracy theories. So, Byrd and his expedition sort of started these polar conspiracies that had people wondering, okay, what did you really see down there?
Right.
Like, what's down there?
Yeah.
And why do we need the U.S. government to lead military expeditions down there, such as Operation High Jump and Operation Deep Freeze, that set up bases there? And I'm going to come back to that in a second and talk a little bit about what those were.
It is interesting that they're military expeditions.
Yes. Yes.
That's the interesting part.
That is the interesting part, and that's what I want you to keep in mind here.
Okay.
So there's this theory that Byrd has this recovered lost diary. Like, it's very Indiana Jones-esque.
Okay.
Have you ever seen any of the Indiana Jones?
I can't say that I have. I'm going to be so honest.
Well, you're missing out, because my husband, Harrison Ford, really shines in those movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Right.
my 70-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, totally.
he actually is a pilot in
Oh,
real life. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Cool. Good for him.
I feel like you're not hyped enough about Harrison Ford, but that's okay. I'll let it go.
Yeah, that's the man.
Yeah.
That's the old white man Kelly's speaking of.
All right. Well.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so there's this theory that there's a lost diary, and it's been recovered, and Byrd flew over the continent himself, and he has entered a hollow earth, a fertile hollow earth, and meets a race of UFO flying inhabitants who express disappointment in humanity's recourse to nuclear power.
Run that back for me.
Lost Diary
Okay.
talks about how this man Byrd, who led all those polar expeditions, flew a plane into the hole in the pole.
Yeah. Okay.
Meets a race of UFO flying people.
Right.
I don't know if they're people or not. Inhabitants.
Inhabitant.
Who express disappointment in what humanity's doing with nuclear power.
Okay, so this is one big political stunt? Is that what this is?
No, it's just nonsense.
Okay.
Like, it's not, at this point, it's not anything, political. It's just
Okay.
people being, the UFO inhabitants are disappointed that we haven't used nuclear power yet to its, fullest potential.
Okay.
You know, it's
Yeah.
that classic thing of, the aliens are so far advanced
Right.
that they're, humanity is just...
archaic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. I'm following.
And somehow we're tying it into the fact that the Earth is hollow.
Yeah. Okay. In some way.
Yeah. Another theory is that he met and fought with Nazis who piloted flying saucers. So that's why the military was there to cover that up.
Got you. Yeah, I'm actually watching a World War II documentary series
Are
right
you?
now.
Yeah. Is it good?
It's pretty good. It's basically just recolorized footage from World War II, which is really
I like
interesting.
that. Yeah, I think that's really cool.
Okay, flying discs from Nazi
Flying
Germany.
discs.
Gotcha.
Which, I didn't know this, but I'm going to get into a little bit more. That's a very, very common conspiracy theory.
Yeah, is it really?
Yes, that Nazis basically were driving around in flying saucers.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had no idea. Have you ever heard anything
I've
like
never
that?
heard of that before.
No.
I've never heard of that in my life.
So I'm not saying that happened, that he flew through the center of the earth and
Mhm.
encountered UFO.
Oh, you're not
people.
saying that? You don't
No,
believe that? Okay.
I don't think so. And I
think
can
maybe you're behind in the times, Kelly.
I can get behind a lot. I really can.
Yeah.
I think Bigfoot is real.
Yeah, I can get behind that.
What else? I believe in ghosts.
Oh, of
I
course.
believe in spirits.
For sure.
I don't believe the earth is hollow.
No.
But to me though, it doesn't look good that the U.S. military is there and that they have anytime the U.S. military has a presence in places that they have no business being in.
Yeah, it's problematic.
Yeah, and it's constantly purported to be that it's because they can cover shit up,
Right.
and that's what they're doing there. And I don't think that's outlandish to me. I don't think it's crazy that they're doing that.
I mean, I could believe that the government is up to no good somewhere far away from
Mhm.
us.
Yeah.
I could believe that.
Yes. Because it's also why are you there?
Yeah.
So, why are you in the middle of the ice?
Right.
What?
Right.
Yeah. So, and along those lines, wait until you hear what they took with them to explore the Antarctic in this Operation High Jump.
Okay.
And I feel like you're gonna vibe with me a little bit on why it's fucking nuts.
Yeah. Okay.
So, Operation High Jump was between 1946 and 1947.
1946, 1947. Okay.
Right after World War II.
Right after World. Yeah.
Right after.
Right after. Not wasting any time.
No. And I'm just going to read you some of the objectives
Okay.
that the U.S. Navy said that they were doing there. Training personnel, testing equipment in frigid conditions. Okay.
Okay.
consolidating and extending the United States sovereignty. Right. Of course you are. Of course you are. Which was actually publicly denied as a goal.
Oh.
They denied that they were doing that, but that is an official objective that came out later. Yeah. Determining the feasibility of establishing, maintaining, and utilizing bases in the Antarctic. So setting up military bases there. Developing techniques for establishing, maintaining, and utilizing air bases on ice. So can we land and take off planes on the ice?
Interesting.
Amplifying existing stores of knowledge of electromagnetic, geological, geographic, hydrographic, and meteorological propagation conditions in the area.
All
so
them
research.
graphics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of graphical research happening,
Okay.
allegedly. And then finally, I'm not even going to say that one because it's not relevant. It's just supplementary objectives of a different expedition.
Did we have any right to do this?
No. Because that land, so speaking of land, that land is inhospitable.
Yeah.
Nobody lived there.
Right.
Nobody has ever lived there.
Yeah.
Indigenous or colonized or not.
Right.
No, like it's just not, it's inhospitable.
Yeah.
So that was actually a big thing where there were a ton of military expeditions there from lots of other countries because the idea was that we wanted to go there and see like what the potential was to have that as a base. And it's just not like there's research bases there now, but it's like you can't.
It's nowhere for a human
No.
to be.
And there's no resources there.
Right.
You know, like you can't go and forage for nuts.
Yeah,
up
right.
there. There's nothing
there.
So going back to these objectives, like, okay, cool, fine.
Yeah, all right, whatever.
Seems legit. Okay. The task force of this operation included 4,700 men. Right after World War II, keep in mind. This is right after World War II. Almost 5,000 men, 70 ships, and 33 aircraft. Why? If this is mostly for just research, why are we sending so much?
A whole lot of things.
This included tankers, seaplanes, destroyers, submarines, aircraft carriers, helicopters, flagships, and icebreakers. Why? You have 5,000 guys to send to the cold ass crack of the earth right after World War II to test equipment in frigid conditions.
Yeah.
Okay. I believe you. All right, sure. What do you think about that?
I think it's quite strange. I think that directly after the biggest global conflict that we have ever seen, to send 5,000 men to ice.
To ice.
With all of these, like, military resources after, like, everyone's military has just been decimated to some degree.
It was called a world war for a reason.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's madness.
Okay, I'm glad you agree.
Send our troops home.
Send them home.
No, it's just strange. Like, that's where your priority is right now?
Yeah, exactly. It's
the Iceland?
It's strange. Like, why is that
I'm not talking about
focus?
Iceland, the place. I mean the land of ice.
The land of
ice.
ice.
The poles.
Right. The poles.
Let me be specific.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
It's important.
So, there was also apparently a fear that there would be an invasion of the U.S. by hostile planes coming from polar regions. I just think that is stupid.
So we're paranoid. That's paranoia. That's
so,
what that is.
Yeah, and like it's also like post-war, like we're entering the Cold War era pretty soon, and Byrd is basically like the U.S. is going to be attacked by planes that are coming from the poles. Like he said, the time has ended when we were able to take refuge in our isolation and rely on the certainty that the distances, the oceans, and the poles were a guarantee of safety. Now, to that I say, planes. No, that's stupid.
Yeah.
That's stupid, Peyton.
Yeah.
Why would enemy countries send their planes all the way to Antarctica and then be like, okay, now that you're in Antarctica, we're going to go attack the U.S.? Oh, no, guys. There's a Nazi plane. It's coming from Antarctica.
Yeah, right.
What are we gonna do? We
Yeah.
don't have enough time. It's gonna get here in 5 days.
Yeah, right.
Oh my god, no. What's such a surprise attack?
It makes no sense.
No. I will say, though, nuclear weapons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Potentially.
Potentially nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
I'll give him that.
Yeah.
Like, at this time, he thought it was planes.
Right.
Like, he specifically said
He
planes.
specifically called out planes.
Yes, hostile planes.
Yeah.
No.
Just be for real.
Why would you do that?
Yeah, you wouldn't. You wouldn't.
You wouldn't.
You wouldn't even spend the extra money on the gas to get
No.
those planes where they
And
need
again,
to go.
we're right after World War II.
Yeah.
The hostile people have been defeated.
Yeah.
They can't.
They're
They don't
being
have that.
sanctioned right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Nuremberg trials are happening.
Yeah. Right.
So, yes, I can get behind the, nuclear weapons thing. If the U.S. took, 5,000 troops and all kinds of military vessels down there, and other countries like Germany, Russia, France, Japan, all of those places had polar expeditions happening as well. Who knows what's in the ice?
Right.
Just as a result of that.
Yeah.
Okay, goddamn Captain America was down there for 80 years, 90 years.
Yeah.
We don't know what's in
Right.
there. And that's actually, a big part of what the research that a lot of these different groups are doing up there is, they're burrowing down into the ice
Yeah.
to, collect data on what life was like, if there was
Right.
any life,
That's isn't that some of the concern also with climate change of
Yeah.
bacteria being released that we have no means of dealing with?
yeah.
Yeah.
Because, if something's frozen in the ice for millennia,
Right.
obviously nobody
You
has
probably
been
don't know much about
exposed.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
our immune systems.
Right.
It would be like a novel virus or
The
bacteria.
Black Plague.
Yeah, Black Plague Part 2. Did you know that plague is endemic in some areas today?
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's endemic.
Endemic means
it's like a small little cluster.
a small little cluster that regularly gets the plague. Every, you know how people get colds in the winter or flu
Yeah.
season? They have plague season. I just think that's neat.
It's something.
I think
It's
that's
really
neat.
interesting.
Yeah.
It's bad for them, I'm sure, but
I want to say it's in. I'm not going to say where I think it is because I don't want to be wrong. TBD.
Yeah.
I'll look that up. I think it's
send,
Madagascar.
Send it to us and send us to us in our email.
I think it's in Madagascar.
Oh, I've always wanted to go there.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
Don't want to get the plague.
Well, you'd have to get vaccines anyway before
Yeah.
you went there.
They have plague vaccines.
Mhm.
That sounds expensive.
Pretty sure they have plague vaccines.
More than likely, I'd say. Anywho.
So I digress because I want to get to some conspiracies about Nazis because those are always good.
Conspiracies.
Yeah. And never upsetting.
Never.
Nazis are never upsetting.
Nothing upsetting about them.
The third German Antarctic expedition was led by Alfred Richer. The purpose was to find an area in Antarctica to establish a whaling station because whale oil comes from fat.
Yeah.
Yes.
Probably boiled down
Yes.
fat, right?
It was the most important raw material for the production of margarine and soap in Germany at the
Okay,
time. So
yeah.
they were exploring possibilities of establishing a whaling station up there to get that resource.
Okay.
And it was also thought that Germany, this was between 1938 and 1939, by the way. So people were like, we're about to be at war.
Yeah, okay. So this was prepping.
Yeah. So we thought this is going to be a lot of strain on foreign stuff,
Yeah.
foreign imports, foreign currency
People aren't going to be
reserves.
wanting to send you shit if you're
Yeah.
trying to take over the globe.
Yeah. And another goal of this expedition was to scout possible locations for a German naval base.
Okay.
Yeah, because we all just want to have our military everywhere that we possibly
want
can.
to stick our flag in the snow.
And they do.
Oh,
They have.
okay.
Did you know that there's a bunch of country flags in the snow down there and up
Yeah.
there? Yeah,
And
it's in a little
just
half
means,
circle.
nothing.
Yeah, it's like putting a flag on the moon.
Yeah.
What?
Okay.
Okay, you went to the moon.
Yeah.
I could put a little flag on the moon that
Right.
says Kelly Friday on it.
Right.
Is it mine? No. So a couple fun facts about this little trip. Nazi German flags were placed on the sea ice along the coast. So those are those gorgeous deep red swastikas that we
stunting.
They named the area New Schwabenland. I think that's how you pronounce it. I cannot be
Closer
sure.
than I would be.
After the ship that they came on. So they established a temporary base. They're like doing some surveys of the land and everything. They're taking pictures. They're doing like aerial photography. And these photographic survey flights, on these, they decided, and I don't know why they did this. I couldn't find why. About a dozen 1.2 meter, which is about 4 foot long aluminum arrows with a 12-inch steel cones and wings that were embossed with swastikas were dropped into the ice. And they've never been recovered. So arrows, like 4 foot long arrows, that's almost as tall as me. I'm 5'5". With swastikas on them, they were just like, and released them into the ice. And they've never been found.
That's fascinating. Are they trying to like preserve something?
They were just marking territory, basically. Yeah. I don't get their obsession with having to put swastikas on everything. Like Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I get it. It's like the power thing.
It's like carving "I was here" into a desk.
Yes. It's like and Captain America would not be pleased about that. I can tell you that right now.
No, not at all.
No.
Not at all.
So shortly after this expedition, World War II broke out, obviously. The Nazis were taking all these aerial photographs and conducting like oceanographic studies. And they actually never set up their whaling station because they were at war.
Got pretty busy.
Yeah, they got a little busy. And they never advanced any like territorial claim. So even though they were there and they bombed with their swastikas, they never like had any actual claim to it. They never like enforced it or anything like that. So New Schwabenland has been the subject of conspiracy theories for decades, and some of them related to Nazi UFO claims.
Right.
So most assert that a huge military base was built there, like, and because they were there in 1938-39 before the war, like, actually broke out, and the built this huge base there. Yeah. And so after the war, all these high-ranking Nazis, like their scientists, their like elite military units, they all fled there and survived that giant base. So the US and the UK have since been trying to conquer that area for decades. Okay. So like the theory is like there's Nazis there right now that like Hitler's in the ice right now.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. And that's why like nuclear weapons are like would want to be used for like that purpose, for like getting them out of there. Okay. And proponents claim the base is sustained by hot springs that provide energy and warmth.
Hot springs
in Antarctica.
In the ice.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me.
So then take it. It's not my wallet.
Is your name Patrick Star?
Yes. Yep. And this is your ID. Yep. I found this ID in this wallet. So if that's the case, this must be your wallet. Sounds right to me. So then take it. It's not my wallet.
Alec and I were just talking about SpongeBob this morning. Like, for a good 20 minutes, we were just quoting stuff from the SpongeBob movie.
It's fantastic.
It's so funny.
It's really good.
It's so funny.
They ride David Hasselhoff.
Yeah, that's what we... And whenever they go to that, like, rough bar, they're like, all double-blowing bubble babies will be beaten senseless.
And don't think I don't know how to
weed them out. Oh my god, it's so good. Anyway, back to Nazis. So, yeah, there's hot springs in the ice. Great.
Okay, cool.
So now I'm almost done here. I'm gonna throw out some conspiracy theories here,
Love.
and we're gonna end up coming back full circle.
Full circle to the Hollow Earth.
To the Hollow Earth, yeah.
Hollow Earth.
In 1978, a Chilean diplomat and Nazi sympathizer, he published the Golden Thread: Esoteric Hitlerism.
That's true. A lot of Nazis fled to South America,
Yeah,
correct? Right.
there is a big presence in Argentina.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay.
And that's actually another conspiracy. A lot of people think that Hitler didn't kill himself.
That he fled.
He fled there.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and lived.
Okay.
So this guy, Miguel Serrano, claims that Adolf Hitler was an avatar of Vishnu and was at that time communing with Hyperborean gods in an underground Antarctic base in New Schwabenland, and that Hitler would lead a fleet of UFOs from the base to establish the Fourth Reich, and that this alleged UFO fleet is referred to as the Final Battalion.
We're really mixing and matching a
Yeah.
lot of cultures and religious
Yes.
beliefs here.
Isn't it? That one I included first because it is just so awful from start to finish. Start to finish. Like, you're gonna pull from Hinduism. Yes. Yes.
What?
And
When we're talking in the same sentence about Nazi Germany and Hitler, you're gonna pull from Hinduism.
yeah. And also assert that they're flying saucers to establish the Fourth Reich.
Wowza. The mental gymnastics one
Yes.
must do to create a theory like this.
And it's like, it was published. And like, yeah, it could be self-published.
Anyone can get published.
Anyone can get published, but like, you went through the work to publish that.
Yeah.
Because you want people to hear that story. And that's what it is, quite frankly. It's a story that you made up.
The wowza. You know what that sounds like the equivalent of? I had a dream once that Laura and I were going to be competing for the United States in the Olympics in swimming, and that we went to Hogwarts and we were under Dumbledore, and that the equivalent of Putin in this story was Voldemort.
Yeah.
And he came and he stabbed our kneecaps so that we couldn't compete in the Olympics.
Jesus.
That's the equivalent of this person's theory.
Yeah, like maybe this guy just had a dream,
Yeah.
just had a crazy dream one day and was like, yeah, that's real.
Like, do you hear me, like, going around talking about, like, how Dumbledore and Voldemort are real and they're
Voldemort
actually, like, could
took
you
out your
imagine?
kneecaps.
Yeah, like, could you imagine?
No, they wouldn't believe you. No one would believe you.
Well, that's because I'm black, but imagine if I were white and
That's
I
what
did
I,
this.
yeah. Like that's why
I
it's
might get some
also
followers.
so outrageous.
I might get some followers. I
If
don't know.
you walked out and said that, nobody would believe you.
I would be
if
put
you
in a
were a
psych
white
ward
man, they'd be like,
immediately. I would be sent to Western Psych the same day.
incredible. It's like the audacity is just incredible. It blows the mind.
It does blow the mind.
So that's a first ridiculous one. Another one I have for you, German Holocaust denier.
Oh,
So these are the
those
people
guys
that
are the best.
right, who just say that that wasn't a thing.
That is a new level of denial. I
Yeah.
should have held that quote for now.
Yeah.
Because that's crazy.
Yeah, that genocide didn't happen.
Yeah.
Even though it's 1,010% proof.
I don't know how you can even make yourself believe that.
It's also so disrespectful.
Oh, just
Like, to deny something like that. It's again
incredible.
like, where do you get off denying that?
Yeah, that 6 million people
Yeah,
were killed.
ridiculous. He catered to the ufology community.
Ufology? The
Ufology.
study of UFOs.
Yes, which was then at the peak of public acceptance.
Okay.
People were all about UFOs, which is funny because UFO is just unidentified flying
Right.
object. It doesn't mean
doesn't have
flying
anything
saucer.
necessarily to do with
No,
aliens.
no, it could be anything. There's a new term,
I've heard about that.
UAP.
Yeah.
What's a UAP?
Would you like to
You
share?
can share.
Unidentified aerial phenomena. So it's saying like, something.
Something in the air.
It's
Yeah.
something. It's a little something.
Something, we
Something
don't
up
know
there.
what it is, but it's certainly there.
So this Holocaust denier, I'm not even gonna say his name because it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
His books claimed that flying saucers were Nazi secret weapons launched from an underground base in Antarctica, from which the Nazis hoped to conquer the Earth and possibly the planets. All the planets.
Every planet there is. Bring back Pluto.
He also sold, this guy that had this claim,
Yeah.
he also sold for $9,999 seats on an exploration team to locate the polar entrance to the Hollow Earth.
This is why rich people are bad.
Yeah.
Because all you need is $10,000 to go on the most ridiculous,
To go nowhere.
stupid, dumb
Mm-hmm.
thing you could do just because you have the money to do it.
You're not getting to where you're going. It doesn't
You're not
exist.
getting there. You can't get there.
It's not there.
But we're gonna spend money on it. We're gonna spend $10,000
What
on
is
that. It's a fig Newton.
Ew. No, I don't offer me that crew. I don't want that.
Boo the crew.
So I have one last thing for you here.
Okay, I'm ready.
Les Matins du Magicien, The Morning of the Magicians.
Yeah,
It was a book
you
written.
said that nicely, by the way.
Thank you. I do speak fluent French.
You do.
Oh.
Oui.
Oui.
Oui, je parle français pour 14 ans.
Yeah.
Courtney will like that.
She will.
Like your pronunciation.
Shout out
was a
to
little off.
Courtney.
Yeah. Shout
Yeah.
out to Courtney.
If only at perfect pitch, you might be
I
able to do
was just
it better.
gonna say that. Whenever we did, for listeners out there who don't personally know us, Peyton and I went to an all-girls Catholic high school, and we had it was like a nationalities mass or something.
Yeah,
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And I was chosen over Courtney to read a prayer in French,
Yep.
and she was livid.
Yeah.
She pretended like she was happy for me. She wasn't. And then after I was done, she criticized my pronunciation of the
Mhm.
words, even though it was perfect.
Yeah.
And
Beautiful.
it was
Splendid.
yeah, it was absolutely perfect. And she was like, "You pronounced this wrong," and I was like, "No, I didn't," but okay. So anyway, because we've been here for 800 years.
Yeah.
So wrapping up, let me just skip to. So this book basically claims that a society, the Free Society of Berlin,
Mm-hmm.
had made contact with an alien race
Okay.
and dedicated itself to creating spacecraft to reach the aliens. In partnership with this other society and the Nazi Party, they developed a series of flying disc prototypes. And when the Nazis were defeated, the society allegedly retreated to a base in Antarctica
Mhm.
and vanished into the Hollow Earth to meet up with leaders of an advanced race that were inhabiting the inner Earth. So we're back.
We made it.
The Earth is
Is
hollow, and there is a vast, fertile land in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So essentially, there's
Their,
always
farmers markets must be wild.
oh my god, incredible.
I love
Those
to visit one of
peaches.
those.
So essentially, there's always going to be conspiracies about the Hollow Earth and military
Yeah.
involvement and cover-ups, UFOs, secret research, like etc. And I eat it up. I
I
eat
love
it up. And polar regions are basically the perfect place to blend all of that together because it's so vast. It's
Right.
inhabitable long term.
Yeah.
And most people can't go there.
It's like ocean theories. Like,
Yes.
what am I gonna say?
Yes, it's like I can't go there.
Right.
I can't dive deep into the ocean. I can't walk around on the ice shelf.
Yeah.
You could say anything is out there, and I can't technically tell you that you're
You
wrong
can truly say anything you
because
want.
I'll probably never be able to go there and confirm.
Right.
So that's it. The end. Hitler is
Wow.
still alive. He's living in an underground base in Antarctica. Sorry about it.
Sorry about it.
Yeah.
Hate to tell everyone.
Hate to tell
really
everyone.
terrible.
Yeah.
Really bad news.
Yes. But that's it. Yeah.
Well, I guess that's it for this podcast. It is coming out to almost exactly 2 hours,
Oh,
which
fantastic.
is pretty much what we
Are you proud of us,
anticipated.
Lee?
I am actually really proud.
That's
Yeah,
great.
we actually did great this time.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this week's
Yeah,
topics.
this was great.
Again, a lot of range, which tends to be true for
Yeah,
us.
I feel like it's always going to be two
Yeah.
totally different things.
which is what we love
Which
here.
is fine, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know when next time's gonna be.
Mhm.
We're still getting the scheduling
Yeah,
search
no, but this
down.
time.
We don't know when this time's
Yeah,
gonna be.
expect this in the future.
Maybe never. I don't know. But for now, that's it. That's all we wrote.
I do want to give a quick shout out to some sources that I have.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I want to make sure that we do that.
Right.
And I'm going to just read like a couple out.
Okay.
And I'd like to say like they'll be in the episode description as well if you want to like
Yes.
fact check us. But I used Wikipedia a lot, and how I use Wikipedia is I go to the references section
right.
and I make sure I fact check everything. So I'm just going to do a blanket, like I had a Wikipedia for John Cleves Sims Jr. I had a Wikipedia for Operation High Jump, Wikipedia for Nazi UFOs, and I looked through a bunch of the sources on there. And I also used timeandnavigation.edu
Okay.
for the U.S. Goes to Sea Wilkes expedition, and all of those links will be available as well.
Gotcha. Okay, I'll share some of mine then. So I got a lot of my information from having some technical difficulties. I got a lot of my information from the Australian Institute of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Studies website. I got a lot from Australians Together. I got some from some government websites, and I fact-checked those profusely. And mostly just like Australian organizations is
Awesome.
most of the websites, but I will also put them in the description for anyone to take a peek at. If we have a description, you'll find it there.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Shout out to the crew for helping us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Shout out to Raven for being quiet pretty much the whole
Yeah,
time.
what a dream.
It's really incredible.
Sock would not allow it.
So she did great. And shout out to us for being such interesting, funny,
Yeah.
amazing, resplendent human
Incredible.
beings.
Incredible.
Yeah. That's all she wrote. Do-do-do-do-do.
Thank you for listening to How Much Time You Got with Peyton and Kelly.